Welcome to Growth and Green Tea, the podcast that explores the stories of individuals who have overcome obstacles and trials in their lives. I am your host, Andrea Beam, and each week I'll be joined by a special guest who will share their personal journey of growth and resilience. From facing difficult challenges to experiencing personal growth, these guests will share their unique stories and insights. And through their experiences, my aim is to empower and encourage our listeners, providing them with a blueprint for dealing with their own obstacles. So grab a cup of green tea and join us as we dive into the inspiring stories of individuals who have turned their struggles into opportunities. Welcome to Growth and Green Tea. Welcome to Growth and Green Tea podcast. I am your host, Andrea Beam, and today we have our guest, Courtney. And it's so funny because Courtney's last name is Courtney Paul. And for the longest time, I kept having in my head Courtney Love. And so I think forever and ever and ever, your name is going to just be like that in my head. I don't even know why, but that's just who you're going to be to me forever.
Perfect.
So, this has been a long time coming, both the podcast, having you on here, and just I'm loving that our two paths are converging in this way today, right now, to be able to share your story with everyone. I think that people are going to be so touched and empowered by what you have to share. And so welcome to the podcast, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about just, I'm going to kind of go all the way back to the beginning, because that's kind of where your story starts here with, how old were you? You were in what, high school?
No, I was 21.
You were 21. Okay. And when you were 21, I want you to just take it from there and just go straight into your story of what happened to you when you were 21.
Okay. So it was April of 2009. I had gone to Good Friday service with my family. And afterwards, it was like the first nice spring day. So my boyfriend and I went over to the neighbor's house for just like a little fire after they put their kids to bed. And there was just a few of us over there. And we were just hanging out and having some drinks. And earlier, like a few days earlier, my mom had called me and was like, "You need to come home right now." And I was like, "I'm 21 and I don't have to come home right now." And she had a dream that something really bad happened to me, and I was screaming for her to help me, and she couldn't. And so she just had this conversation with me about, choices and, being young and 21 and things like that. And so I like took it to heart. And so I just kind of was like thinking about like my life at that time and things. Well, I was just sitting there around the little fire, and it started to die down. So the neighbor guy went to grab gasoline to like make the fire get big again. And he grabbed racing fuel instead of gas. So as he was starting, excuse me, as he was starting to pour it, it exploded. And I just remember it being a really loud boom. And the fuel splashed onto me and then rolled up my body and lit my body on fire. And so I just remember like jumping up and being like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm on fire." And at the time, my dad retired from Albany Fire Department, so I knew all about stop, drop, and roll. So I jumped up and I had a really big hooded sweatshirt on, and I was like, "Oh, I need to get this off of me, otherwise it's gonna like burn to my skin." And so I just kind of held my breath and 1, 2, 3, and like threw it off. Well, I feel like I threw it off. I think it just kind of disintegrated off. And then I took off running to stop, drop, and roll. And my cousin who was there, he actually chased after me and tackled me and just started to like hit me to put the fire out. Well, racing fuel is a really high octane fuel, so it burns hotter and faster with oxygen. So every time it hit me, it'd get that oxygen that would just like fuel it even more. And so I just remember him finally like just bear hugging me and just like laying on top of me to smother it. And I think at that point, like I don't, I think it was like that fight or flight mode too. So I just kind of was laying there like, oh, what's happening kind of thing. But I remember them like freaking out and asking like, oh, what hurts? What hurts? And I was just like, well, my legs, they really hurt. So they hosed down like my legs. And I remember my face, like my lips feeling like really big. And I just kind of laid there while I heard them calling 911. And I just watched my shirt had actually come off. And I remember watching it just burn on the grass like to nothing. And, um, and then I remember being like just kind of yelling out, like, God help me. And once the fire department showed up, it was actually one of my parents' really good friends that showed up that I've known my whole life. And as soon as he like walked through the doors, I saw him and we made like eye contact. And I'm like, Doug, I was like, call my dad. And he looked at me and just like his face would just went white. And he was like, sorry. He's like, oh my gosh, Courtney. And so I remember I even got up and like walked onto the stretcher. I remember that. And then they put me in the back of the ambulance and then took me code 3 to Lebanon and stabilized me there. And I was just kind of in and out of it on the way there. I think I lost consciousness. I don't really remember that part. They took me, which is also kind of weird. At the time, my sister was dispatching for Lebanon police. So when the call came through too, and they were saying, 21-year-old female from Sweet Home, really bad burn injuries. She had heard it over the radio, and then my now brother-in-law, but her boyfriend at the time, was blocking traffic for us to come through. And then she just like lost it and was like, she just knew. She's like, oh my gosh, it's Courtney. And so when I got to the hospital, one of the guys that I've known just because I have a lot of family in the fire, industry, and my dad. And I just remember probably them wheeling me into the emergency room, and the one EMT that I knew like grabbed my hand and squeezed it a couple times, and like he had tears in his eyes and was just like, you're gonna be okay. And so they took me into the emergency room and literally just like coded me. Basically, I was like in an ice bed with like things on me and doing all of these things. My cousin was working graveyard for the sheriff department and came in and was like, man, it smells like burnt flesh in here, and he had looked up at one of the boards and saw a name or saw Sweet Home 21-year-old female. And it's just weird because everyone just kind of like knew it was me. And he was asking the nurses, was like, who's in that room? They were like, well, we don't know, this stuff. And he was like, who's in there? And they finally like told him. And so he came in and he was like one of the first ones in there with me. And he's actually like a big brother to me. So like having him was like comforting. And then my sister got there and she said that it was like so weird because there was like one spot right here on my shoulder that she could touch on my entire body. And so she just like did little circles like on my shoulder right here because there was nothing else that she could touch because I was just like huge and swollen and on ice things. And then dispatch ended up calling my dad at the fire department in Albany and was like, hey, your daughter's been in a really bad accident. Like, you need to get to the hospital in Lebanon. And so he got there, called my mom, woke my mom up. And when my dad got there, though, when he came in and he looked, I mean, I feel like that's probably a firefighter's worst nightmare is like getting a call that, your daughter or son has been burned. Um, and I, he looked at my legs and my burns and just like started crying because they were so bad. And when my mom got there, he went to the doors and was like, you need to prepare yourself because it's not good. And so when my mom and dad came in, they just, you know, they stayed really strong for me, but it was super hard for them. And they decided to just take me by ambulance, not by life flight. There's actually another person that got burned with me that they ended up life flighting instead because she had burnt her airway and I didn't. So they took me up to the Oregon Burn Center there, and my mom rode with me. And I remember uh, I kept asking my mom, how's my face? Like it felt like my face was melted. And she wouldn't answer me, but she just said, you're gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And she didn't know what else to do, so she just started like singing to me. And I can't believe I'm getting emotional.
It's really amazing the things that, our mind is a pretty amazing thing. There's no way I'm not gonna be able to cry. um, our mind is amazing in the things that you're telling me, right? Like that you don't remember, right? Our brain protects us in those moments. And yet the things you do remember are equally as interesting, right?
Hmm.
Having your mom sing to you, like, what a better memory than that. If you were going to have memories of this, this thing that happened to you that is so terrifying and awful, to have that as one of the memories just totally stands out to me, that just how amazing our brains and are in how they try to protect us,
Hmm.
and I don't know, what a blessing that is a memory for you.
Yeah, well, and I've told this story so many times, and I don't know why it's making me cry.
Well, I mean, I would say your whole um this whole thing that happened to you is emotional, right? Like I feel like the whole thing from start to finish is emotional. And
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about your mama, right? Like
Yeah. Well, and I'm a mom now too, so like I don't know if I could be as strong as my mom
mhm.
through it. But she actually was singing to me His Eyes on the Sparrow because she used to sing that to me as a kid. And so, and I was, as kids, we were always comforted when mom would sing because she has such a good voice too. But I was in so much pain. And the paramedic that was with taking care of me on the way up there, I kept asking, can I please have more pain medicine? Can I please have more pain medicine? And she was like, looked at my mom and she's like, I've literally given her the most amount of morphine that I can give her. I cannot give her any more. And then all of a sudden, my mom was like, oh my gosh, she's like, morphine doesn't work on her dad. It must not work on her. And so she was like, oh, okay. And so she switched to something more like potent or whatever. And then that finally like helped. But that was crazy to find out too, because I'm in all this pain and knowing that the pain medicine wasn't working on me. But we got to Portland to the Oregon Burn Center, and then they wheeled me into like this triage room, and they made my mom stay out, and she had to sign kind of like these waiver things because they were going to put this. It's called a central line, where they basically put like this like implant thing in your neck, and that basically is what keeps you alive. But you have to kind of sign like a waiver thing about it because it's a kind of like a life or death kind of thing. And so I just remember being up in that room with probably 12 nurses. I mean, it was crazy. And I was laying in the bed, people running all around, and I remember them starting to like pop blisters. And I didn't realize that was what they were doing. I said, oh my gosh, I was like, I think my catheter's leaking. And they were like, oh no, honey, those are the blisters we're popping on you. And I was like, oh, okay. And because I think at that point too, I still didn't realize it was that serious. I think I was still thinking that um, I was going to work the next day, which is so weird. So I was just like, oh, okay, and then I remember hearing like buzz cutters. And the last thing I said before I just like went out was, don't give me a mullet, because my hair was melted to my head. So they had to shave my head. And
Don't
and
give
I
me a
remember,
bullet.
Yeah, and then I just like, and the nurse just kind of giggled a little bit and was just like, "Oh, honey," and then I went out. Yeah, after that, I don't remember a lot in the beginning because I was on so much pain medicine. That and they give you medicine so that you don't remember a lot too. Um, but I guess when they have to clean your burns, like scrub them to keep them clean and make sure that you don't get infections. So they would call bath days, and they'd take you into like a just really sterile room. I don't remember them until before I was coming home, but I guess they'd wheel me in, and then they just basically are scrubbing away the dead skin off of you. And my parents would say that they could hear me, like they'd have to be in the waiting room, but they could hear me in the down the hall screaming and in pain. And uh, I mean, I don't remember that, which I'm glad that they give you medicine and there's medicine like that available. But I basically just laid in bed, and burns will still burn after like they've been put out too, so they can't fully evaluate you up until a few days to see what my actual like the depth of my injuries are. And so when they evaluated me, at first they thought they were going to have to take off like part of my bottom lip, my ear, skin graft underneath my chin, because when I threw my sweatshirt off, it had got underneath of my chin here and like kind of my neck. And then the skin on like my right arm was just like dripping off. And I remember that. But they thought they were gonna have to like skin graft my whole arm as well. But luckily, I they only had a skin graft from like my waist down. And I had skin grafts done like a couple weeks after the injury happened because I had some second degree burns that they wanted to heal so that they could use that skin for my burns. So, what they do for skin grafts is there's a lot of different ways, but luckily they were able to use my own skin. They can, use skin from other people. And I think they use it like from pigs or something too. Um, yeah, but for me, I was lucky enough to use my own skin. So that what they do is when they wheel you in, they basically like strap my legs up in like a, I don't know, like shackle kind of thing. And they'll like skin the good skin off of you and they run it through this mesher because mine looks like kind of fish scaly. And it's so cute because actually we have a friend whose daughter, when she was little, she used to say it was my mermaid skin and how cool she thought it was. So
I love
I
that.
know. I know. So I referred to that as my mermaid skin, like working at the club with the kids, like when they're like, what happened? And they touch it and stuff. But they end up running it through this mesher because they're able to stretch it to use it on larger surfaces. So they did that, and they actually, because I was so young and healthy, were able to do my surgery in one. It was a 5 or 6 hour surgery, and they were assuming that they'd have to go back in and make repairs and things, but all my skin grafts took, which was totally a God thing. Like through the whole thing, I had so many people, when people talk about like the power of prayer, it's a real thing. Like I remember there were just so many different things that were supposed to go the opposite way that actually went really well. And I know that it was all because of God. And it was actually the first time ever I've ever felt like the presence of the Holy Spirit, like actually feel that. Um, which was really cool. I mean, there were times where I should have been in like when they asked me if what my pain level was, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, like a 5, 6. They're like, what? Like you should be like a 15 probably. And so like there were things like that, and that they were like, well, do you need more medicine? And I'm like, no, I think I'm good. They're like, no, I think you need some more. But it was just like this comfort and peace that I would feel um just throughout all of it. I mean, there was a point where they thought I was going to lose both my legs because they were so severely burned. And I didn't. And they ended up not having to skin graft my arm, take off my lip or my ear. They use this stuff called Silvadene, and it's real silver that they make into like this cream, cooling cream that like heals burns. And so my mom like coated my arm and my face and my on my left hand, my ring finger and like my pointer fingers all were really burned too. And so she would just coat, like constantly coat my hands and in that Silverdene. And then one day, like I just had these gnarly scabs that just fell off, and I had like pink, fresh skin underneath them. And so that was pretty cool too. I mean, the body is amazing. Um, it's just crazy to me how it heals like that. But I was supposed to be up there for at least 3 months, and I got out after about a month. And they wanted to send me to a rehabilitation center to help with like my physical therapy and my walking again and things like that. But because my dad was a paramedic, they let me go home, and my parents were able to take care of me. My mom took a leave of absence from work and basically were my caretakers, helped me, get up and like shower and do all of those things that I couldn't do for myself, which was really like kind of hard to like. I'm happy that I have amazing parents. I mean, I never got one infection. They took such good care of me and things, but I struggled with that too because I was 21 and like, in my prime, and I couldn't even, wash myself and do things like that. But I was so fortunate to have family that took care of me, and like that, because a lot of people don't have that.
One thing that's really standing out to me that you're talking about right now is just your gratitude. I mean, you're talking about a situation that is pretty intense, right? I mean, everything that happened to you, I can't think of another word other than just it's intense and
Hmm.
on so many different levels. And yet what you're focusing on right now is your gratitude for the circumstances surrounding that intense time of your life, and you're so
Hmm.
focused on the gratitude and not the not oh, not the negative, or even, I'm sure that there had to have been moments where you were pulled into probably a darker place, because I feel like I
Hmm.
don't know how you couldn't have some moments like that.
Right.
Other than the gratitude, how did you combat that mental struggle of, like you just said, like, look, I was 21 years old, I was in my prime, and here I am dealing with like skin grafts and recovery and healing and all these things, and our, whether we like it or not, right? Like our oh shoot, what's the right word I'm looking for? Our appearance is
Hmm.
is usually important to us, right?
Hmm.
And so how did you handle that mentally? What was the mental process for you that you went through during that recovery period? Good, bad, ugly, great, all the above.
I think that, I mean, it's kind of like with death, people handle grief in different ways, and there's those different stages. I feel like it's the same thing when you've had something like traumatic happen to you as well. I mean, I had times where I was um, really angry, and then there were times where I was just really sad and would cry. But I I think that I just took a day at a time. We put towels up over the mirrors in the bathrooms at the hospital because I didn't want to look until I was ready. And I knew if I looked maybe too soon, then that would just kind of mess with my head.
Mhm.
So um, I remember having those up, and I wouldn't really look because it was hard. If I knew if I looked, it would hard to be able to see like in my head, like the future of it. You know what I mean? I don't think I would have been able to really see past that part. So I waited till I was ready. And like once my face had healed a lot, that's when I looked. Because I remember telling my mom, asking her, I was so concerned about my face because I love kids and little kids. Like I've always just like been drawn to babies and kids and things, and I was so scared that like they'd think I would would be scared of me or think that I like looked like a monster or something. And so, I mean, I was really thankful in that my face had healed a lot. Um, but I think I prayed a lot, and I really leaned on like my family for support and friends. And then actually, up at the burn center, they have physical therapists that come in and work with you, and they also have occupational therapists, and they also have like mental health therapists that come in and just kind of like talk to you to kind of see what, kind of where your head's at, how you're feeling. But I've always just kind of been like a fighter. Like let I wouldn't let the negative in, I guess. I just was like, nope, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna do everything possibly I can that the doctor tells me to do so I can get better. Because I feel like mind over matter is such a powerful thing too. So knowing like I wasn't gonna get into that poor me um mindset.
Mhm.
And once I got home, I mean, there was a few times once because when I got home, it had just started to be summertime. So all my friends are out doing fun things, and I'm in a recliner, like not being able to do anything.
Mhm.
And so there were times where I'd just get kind of angry and things, but then, it would pass and I would feel better. I think just you have to be able to feel those things to be able to heal and get better. So I think
Well, what was your total time frame from the time that this happened? And you said it was in April, right?
Mhm.
From the time that this happened, how long did this whole healing process take for you before you were um, able to be back, up and moving around and out of the house and things like that? How long of a process was this overall?
So the healing process was I couldn't work or do anything for 1 year.
Okay.
Um, but as time went on, and I got compression garments and things, I could do things like go, I don't know, go out and do some things for maybe a couple hours, but then I'd start to get kind of sick, like a fever, and um, if I overdid it, because your body is constantly like trying working so hard to repair itself that when you're trying to, I don't know, even if it's just walking around or something, I mean, it takes a lot of energy. And I was on such strong pain medications too,
Mhm.
um, that I'd have to be home to be able to take those because then I would just be out. So yeah, it was about a year that I of not being able to work or do anything. And, I mean, there were times where they thought that I might not be able to have kids because of the skin and stretching, and which was devastating because I absolutely love kids too. And then maybe not be able to hike or do water ski. I mean, the things that I love, outdoor things that I love to do. So I was just determined to get better. I mean, I wasn't going to let somebody tell me that I wasn't going to be able to do those things that I love. So I mean, my dad would take me to the gym and I'd walk on a treadmill or the elliptical and help me do my stretches that I needed to do to keep my skin loose. And, um, yeah, I just got in that mentality of I'm going to get better and I'm not going to let this defeat me.
What do you, a few years ago, you did a fundraiser. Tell me about that fundraiser a little bit.
So in 2019, it was my 10-year burn anniversary. And every year on my burn anniversary, I always try to do something that they told me I wouldn't be able to do. Like one year I ended up like rock climbing at Smith Rock with some friends. Um, I went on a trip and jumped off of waterfalls, and like I just always tried to make something good out of it, the situation. So for my 10 year, I wanted to do a fundraiser for the Oregon Burn Center and give back to the place that saved my life and continued to support me all these years later. So I got some friends together and people. We formed a committee, and I didn't want it to be like a normal fundraiser. I wanted it to be more like a celebration. So we had a couple bands at the barn. and there was food trucks and drinks, and people could buy a ticket, and all the proceeds, 100% of them went to the burn center. And it was super fun, great night. We had some people from the burn center. My friend Erin, who's a burn nurse, came and talked, and then Lynn, who also got burned with me, she spoke, and just some other people from the burn center. And we ended up raising like $17,000 for the burn center, which is incredible for their
Wow.
aftercare like program. So for kids to go to burn camps in around the US where they get to just be kids and be with other kids who have been burned as well. So money goes towards that. Their LEAP program, which is like a rafting healing kind of trip for 18 plus years old. I did that trip. It's awesome. But I mean, it just goes to all of these things that can help burn survivors after their burn injury.
So
So,
do you still deal with today um, after effects of the injuries that you sustained that day? And is there ongoing treatment, or do you still deal with any part of that in your life now?
I think a little bit. I mean, I never did any kind of therapy after my injury, and I really should have, because like with trauma and like PTSD things, if you don't kind of I don't know, try and deal with what has happened and you just move on along life, something will end up happening that like this trauma will just like kind of, you'll kind of like vomit it out in ways that you don't even realize that you're doing it. And so I started going to EMDR therapy probably, oh gosh, like 6 or 7 years after, because I had witnessed a horrific car accident. And so it brought up weird things in me. But
What is EMD therapy?
EMDR, it's a kind of therapy where it like rewires the neurons in your brain, and they use either like a sound, and they make you a sound, or it's like a finger thing too. They use it for like veterans or people in police or fire, law enforcement or fire, or just people who have had traumatic experiences. So they make you think of like one of the details from your experience, and they play like a high, like for me what worked was like a high pitch like sound, and it's really hard to explain. It just rewires your brain and changes how you think of it, I suppose.
Okay.
But yeah, it was amazing. It really helped me and worked. I don't know, what was I even saying? What was the question?
Let's see, I know I kind of sidetracked you there. So we were talking about the therapy and how people probably really should go through
Mhm.
therapy,
Oh yeah.
that
Um,
is able to bring you some help. So
yeah. But oh, you were asking too if I still deal with some things. So yeah, uh, when with my skin, when with skin grafts, you lose that elasticity in your skin. So I'll have like mobility issues where I had some Z plasties done a long time ago, but what they do is you get these scar bands that you can't move your legs as well. It just pulls that skin tight so that you can't move certain ways. So there's certain things I like can't do. Like I can't sit like kneel down on my legs because it like just pulls the skin too much. So I have like some mobility things, and then some issues with like scar tissue that with swelling and things. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I healed way better than they ever expected me to. So, I mean, they're
when you
just minor,
when you think
minor.
back on all of this, like you think back on, I mean, this is a year of your life that you were battling both mentally and physically.
Hmm.
Back on that, what do you feel, and it could probably be more than one thing, but what gave you hope? Like, what helped you look forward in the process, or what helped you to feel empowered? What gave you hope to keep going? Like, what were those things for you? And it could be more than one.
Um, Probably, well, I mean, I've said it a lot, but really my faith. I mean, trusting that God had a purpose and a plan for my life, and that there were things, a lot of times I feel like God uses bad situations to turn them to good. I think that, I mean, I think that my situation was one that, like, it definitely brought my family really close again. I didn't make as wasn't making very great choices at the time. And I think it brought my family, and especially me and my dad, really close back together. And I think it was to change my path, maybe. I mean, I don't, not that I necessarily that I was going down a really bad road, but I think that if I wouldn't have made some changes, maybe that was like kind of a wake up call for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, my faith and then family, like, I don't know if people really know how important it is to have family and support like that. I mean, I don't know what people do without family. I guess hopefully they have really great friends, but um that was mostly it for me.
Do you
That
feel
gave me
like
hope.
in like those when you had the moments of probably the deepest part of your battle, where you were having, or maybe you were sad or depressed or whatever, in those moments specifically, how did you, and this could be similar to the last question that I asked you, though, how did you fight your way out of those moments and not stay there?
Hmm, that's a good question. um
Because some people stay there. Some people have a harder
yeah.
time than others in getting out and of that mode or that trajectory that they're on mentally.
Hmm.
And clearly you were able to fight your way out of that mentality. Um,
I think I knew that I just wanted more from life. I didn't want to get addicted to pain medication. I didn't want that kind of life. I didn't want to just be depressed in a poor me sense. I've never really been that way. So for me, it was like, you know what, I can either take a bad situation and have the poor me attitude and stay stuck in this and have a miserable life, or I can just make the best of what I have. I mean, I still have my legs, I can still walk. Um, I've healed way better than they ever expected. And so I just tried to always try to remind myself those positive things, and just not focus on the negative. I,
you
I
almost
mean, I,
talked yourself out of it, right? Like,
yeah,
okay, well, I can have this or I can have this, right? I can
yeah.
do this or do this. And it was almost like you gave yourself choices.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you did. You gave yourself choices in the matter, and you
Hmm.
had to pick the choice that was going to get you out of that state of mind. So
Hmm.
there was a definite intentionality there that, hey, I don't want to stay in this
Yep.
place. I don't want to stay here. What advice would you give to people, maybe not necessarily that have been in a burn situation, but maybe they have been in a traumatic situation that has happened to them? What advice would you give them for their journey or their road ahead?
I would tell them that they should get help. I mean, reach out to, I mean, somebody either that they trust or go to therapy. Therapy has, I think that people feel embarrassed that they need therapy, but they shouldn't. I mean, when you go through really traumatic events, there's a lot of people who can't, relate, and that having somebody that has those tools to help them get better or to deal with how they're feeling or what they've experienced. It makes a huge difference. I mean, that's one thing I wish I would have gone to therapy sooner, but I just kind of denied it. It was like, no, I'm fine. I don't need it. And then like I'd hear a firework go boom and I'd jump off a picnic table and go running. I mean, things like that you just don't realize and that will affect you the rest of your life. Um,
I think it's a natural thing too, to anytime we've been through anything traumatic or we're going through something extremely difficult, we tend to shrink away, right? We tend to
mhm,
hide, or we don't want to deal with people, or whether that's because of overstimulation, or you get tired of repeating your story, or you feel like they don't understand.
right.
I think it was really important that you shared the story about, what was it, the summer camps that the kids can go to,
Yeah.
be around other kids that have gone through the same thing.
Mhm.
There's a connection there.
Yeah.
And so I think you bringing that up is really, really powerful, in that the shrinking away does not help you. The hiding does not help you. And reaching out to
No.
find someone, whether it's one person or a group of people, find people that are going through what you're going through, whatever that trauma is, and find that connection. Because I think there's going to be shared tools. I think there's going to be shared um, hope, shared struggles. And when you feel like you're understood, that's pretty powerful.
Mhm.
That's really,
Right.
wow. Your story has just, I mean, it just blows my mind. I've never heard it all the way from start to finish. And it just blows my mind, just the power of the human mind and what you were able to come out of on the other side, and
Mhm.
what you're able to do now. And look what you do now. You work with kids, right?
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, you are, what is your title? You're at the Boys and Girls Club, right?
Uh-huh. So I'm the development director. So I'm in charge of the fundraising events and making sure that the club keeps running and is funded so that these kids have a safe place to attend after school.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. You're able to, to be around the kids. You're able to be involved in that, and you're such an inspiration, Courtney. Like, I look at
Thank
you and I feel so inspired that, if I was ever to go through a traumatic experience, that I would draw from your story, because it's just so powerful. So
you. Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you for being willing to share it. Thank you
Yeah.
for being here.
For
Is
having.
there anything that you would like to share with the listeners that I haven't asked you about, or that you would like to just share or promote on here? Anything about the Boys and Girls Club or fundraisers that you're doing, or anything like that?
Well, I just encourage people to reach out if they don't know exactly what the Boys and Girls Club does. We're so much more than, I mean, we do athletics, but we're so much more than athletics. Our after school programs, providing that enrichment for kids and that safe space for them to go. It's incredible the work that we do there, and those youth professionals that we have that work directly with the kids are amazing. So I just encourage people that if they don't know, to reach out and find out more information. And there's different ways than just money to donate. We could, volunteer your time, anything like that. We can always use volunteers as well. But um, the Boys and Girls Club is a great place for kids.
And if people wanted more information on how they could also maybe help the burn center that you were talking about,
Oh.
is it just the Oregon Burn Center? Is that what it's
Yep.
called? Okay.
Uh-huh. It's at Emmanuel Hospital in Portland. It's the only one in Oregon. And then there's I used to do peer support for them. I haven't done it in a long time. And basically it's you go through a training, and then if there's people that come into the burn center with similar injuries as you, or different demographics that like would pair you with them, you're just kind of their support. You ask them questions, you talk to them, or they can ask you questions. I actually met a friend through that. She had gotten burned, and she was around the same age that I was a few years after my burn injury. And her mom, somebody had told her about me, and her mom called me, and I went up and visited with her and answered her questions and all kinds of things like that. And then we stayed friends afterwards too. But being able to help other people through that when you've been there is so rewarding, because you feel like you're using your bad experience for good. And so I really enjoyed being able to do that too.
That's awesome. Well, if anybody has any more questions about this, we'll put some sort of contact information in the comments when we post this. And I just encourage you guys to be empowered by Courtney's story, just like I am. And I hope that you guys all have gotten some great value out of hearing her journey and how she was able to fight and battle her way back. And I'm just so honored to be able to call you a friend. And I just want to say thank you again for being on here.
Thank you for having me.